Kevin in New York. You're live with Eric and Seth.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah. So just so Seth knows who you are, you've called a bunch of times. When you call in, what do you usually talk about?
Well, I'm not going to focus on what I usually talk about before because I've gotten used to how the show kind of works. So I'm not going to bring up things that will bring us down rabbit holes and stuff like that. But,
okay. I just want to, what I want to point out is Seth, Kevin comes in and he often will have a view to bounce off of us. And what's interesting is they're not always the same, but they often, can lack, a lot of critical research. Kevin's had some really good calls. Kevin's had some rough calls. And so we don't always take him, but what did you want to talk about today?
Well, to focus on the topic of skepticism. Now,
what about skepticism?
To do with that? Okay, well, a lot of times I've heard this brought up on the show. I don't want to try to straw man anyone, so stop me if I'm wrong. But as we go about trying to reach the truth on any particular topic, it's often been said maybe that you should check to see if a particular topic is falsifiable or not. Now, I'm trying to focus on spiritual accounts that people or testimonies that they often talk about.
Okay.
To do with that. Now the problem I have with that is that might not be the correct process, because as you go about checking to see if a topic is falsifiable or not, you may gain a bias for that falsifiability.
Well, so I mean, let's be absolutely clear. Everyone has a bias. Period. That saying that you're going into something unbiased can be a something you want and you strive for, but everyone has biases. Recognizing that you have it and checking for it so that you do your best to not allow it to sway where you go is where you go from that. But you're
I agree, because
okay. But you're talking about falsifiability, and you're saying that falsifiability, what, has its limits?
You could say that, but I don't think that it's the correct approach, because while you try to find a falsifiability, you may gain the bias for it. Now what I'm trying to say is that I was going to propose a different process on what we should use to try to approach the truth, having to do with spiritual experiences that people have. Now,
what do you think, Seth?
It's sort of something that you have to work at, because there's a step-by-step process in which you can remove your bias, in which you can stop at each step and say, wait a second, do I want this to be false, or do I even want it to be true? And so then you can move on to the next step. But the process I'm going to propose is take.
Okay. Kevin?
Well, it's one of the reasons why I think that we have court cases over the most controversial topics out there. You know what I mean?
Got it. Well, Kevin?
We take...
Kevin?
Yes.
So I got word from my co-host here. Seth, do you want to take this, or do you want to move on to another call?
I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a couple sentences. First of all, this is a word salad. I don't even know what we're talking about. You get past bias by testing and retesting, right? The scientific process is the best tool we have for weeding out bias. Everyone is going to be biased. But if someone makes an unfalsifiable claim, well, that still is an unfalsifiable claim. And whether I'm biased about it or not, I mean, whether or not something can be tested and proven or disproven exist far beyond any specific bias or perspective. And in no way does the fact that I might have a bias remove the burden of proof from anybody. So, I mean, I think, again, we're wandering out in the weeds. This is a conversation that is so sort of abstract and disjointed from, I think, the things we need to be talking about. I'm hesitant to really spend any more time on it. It's why I did the little gag a second ago. I don't even think this is an academic exercise. I think this is kind of a waste of time. And I hate to say that, but you know, we have the scientific method to help weed through our biases, and a claim that is extraordinary still requires extraordinary evidence. Otherwise, there's no reason to hold to it. And I stand by that. I think that those are the basics. That's the fundamental way we approach what is true and what is not. Okay?
Kevin?
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. I agree, absolutely. But the process that I see, I'm not calling to try to waste any time for anybody, but the process that I'm trying to propose.
Understood. Kevin.
Is that
Kevin, hold on. Have you vetted this by anybody? Have you taken this to other places yet?
Well, yes, because the very process that
no, that's not what I mean. Kevin, go to our Discord. I'm going to be in there in about 10 minutes anyway. And our Discord has an amazing group. Go to our Facebook, run that by it, because it sounds like you have a lot of points that may be really necessary to take together. And because we're limited on space, I would love for you to interact with that. Also, our subreddit. Those are all places where if you put those out, people can read through it, mull it over, and you can kind of, with help from other people, kind of engage with that. Because if it's a process, we're going to need to run a lot of hypotheticals through it. And I don't know if this is the day to go through it. But does that sound like something you're willing to do?
I actually wouldn't be able to. It's not long, the process that I was going to explain to you guys.
Well,
hang on. I am curious. In a nutshell, if we're not using the scientific method, what's your process?
Okay, it's the very process that we use in controversial court cases, like I said, in which we can use the same process when it comes to discerning or trying to reach the truth of whether or not a spiritual experience is true or not, to take one person's experience and weigh it against the testimony of other witnesses.
Okay, now, I'm going to jump in right here.
Because
Kevin.
I'm going to jump in right here. The way our courts are supposed to work, the way they are set up, it is still an evidentiary process. You are providing evidence. And we've also shown that eyewitness testimony in those court cases is notoriously unreliable because of the subjective perceptions of the human brain. There have been whole experiments that have been done in regard to what we see, what we think we see, the problems with human memory, recall about events that we think may or may not have happened, whether or not we are affected by outside forces or influences that cause us to see something that may not be there, our own tendencies toward pattern seeking for better or for worse. So eyewitness testimony, quite frankly, is not a tool in our tool chest. It might be a way for us to start with a hypothesis, but you're still back in the courtroom where evidence is required to prove guilt or innocence. Okay?
I agree, but that is still weighed against another thing in which, as you take in the testimony of a particular person, that person might have the intention to deceive. But it doesn't mean that that person actually will deceive, but then is again weighed against the testimony of other people.
I have no idea where you're going with this. Yeah, Kevin, your response there actually has nothing to do with backing up the claim. It has nothing to do with it. It just,
thanks for calling, Kevin.
Have
a good day, brother. God, I'm just in a bad place. You know what? Yeah. I need to refit. I need to rehabilitate my attitude, because I have just found myself like a race car, always close to the red. And it just doesn't take long before I'm like, this is a waste of time. And I hate being that guy. But after a decade plus of activism, and I hear these wild, wacky tap dances,
Mhm.
I find myself losing patience. I give you my word for the year 2021, I will work on that. I'm going to try to shore that up in myself. I'm going to work, I've got to check in my spirit, and I'm going to work on my walk. And I guarantee you that, my brethren,
Oh no.
my brethren.
Oh, dear diary. Today,
I
made
prophesy
Seth.
that I will be better in 2021. Can I
d-
get an amen?
oh my gosh, dear diary. Today, Seth lost his temper on my show. What am I doing with
I mean,
my
I don't know if I
life?
lost my I just have a hard time. Like,
That's
what?
okay. No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
don't you ever just look, what? What
Oh yeah.
are you talking about? And then, is that an insult to them? Am I supposed to be better about having these conversations? It's very possible that I'm handling it poorly and just in a bad place.
No. So
uh,
here's the thing: is these conversations need to be had. And you don't need to be the person to have them. We don't need to be the people to have them. People call in with us so that we can have kind of an example conversation, and so that those can be had out. But that doesn't mean that you save every one of those, thoughts so that you can call us and have us be the people to do that for you. We can't be that resource. They can go online. They can find other people to talk to about them. Seth, I absolve you. You
it's funny,
you do not have to be that person for everyone.
the more I've learned, I've had brain scientists and neurologists and neuroscientists and psychologists and people come on, people experts in cognition. And the more I've learned about eyewitness testimony, the more terrified I am of eyewitness testimony. At the
Right.
very least, learning about how the brain can be deceived has really helped me in discounting all of these sort of personal testimonials. I had a personal experience. I felt, I thought I saw, I dreamed. Someone's defending their religion with those. It's been hugely helpful in discounting those and just sort of brushing them off the table, because we know
Yeah.
how easily the human brain can be tricked. But I do find myself a little bit frustrated at this notion that people might be, relying on something other than the data. And
Yeah.
I saw it, I thought I saw it, whatever. I don't get that.
Well, so the way that I get through it a bit is I recognize that their experience may be what they're, I'm not gonna fight you that you had an experience. Just I'm going to wonder whether or not what you're describing relates to reality.
Well, and I'll also
Is
use
that
the outsider
combined?
test for faith, which John
Yeah.
Loftus likes to talk about. Jesus appeared to me in a vision. I'll say, well, if a devout Muslim said that Muhammad appeared to him in a vision, you would then accept that on the same grounds. If,
Yeah.
Krishna appeared to someone in a vision, you would then accept that under those same rules. So I think the outsider test for faith has some utility when it comes to people making experiential claims, for sure.